The NCAA Men's Basketball Committee finished up their summer meetings on Wednesday and still no decision on NCAA Tournament Expansion. My question? Why not?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Thursday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch, and special shout out to all you everydayers out there and all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. Reminder, you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sport stops sportsing like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is offering every customer a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, y'all, coming up on the show today, we are talking about NCAA Tournament Expansion meetings and the lack of decisiveness coming out of that. We're going to talk about college representation on the Olympic basketball rosters. That's a fun conversation. And updates on a couple MTEs. So buckle up. I'm about to get mad about NCAA tournament expansion. It's par for the course because I hate it. So on Wednesday evening, Matt Norlander, CBS Sports, sent out a tweet. I don't know why I said sent out a tweet. That makes me sound like a grandpa. Well, he sent out a tweet. Matt Norlander tweeted this regarding NCAA tournament expansion. Quote, the NCAA Men's Basketball Committee has wrapped its annual summer meetings with no decision in on whether or not to expand the NCAA tournament, sources tell CBS Sports, end quotes. What? I don't understand why we're leaving these meetings with no decision. You're either going to do it or you're not. You've been talking about it forever. It's time to pee or get off the pot, right? Is that the quote? Something like that. You know what you're going to do, right? Like that's the thing. And I just don't get it. So more from Norlander's tweets. Quote, the topic was discussed, the topic being expansion, at length on Tuesday and remains up for debate for many reasons. Arguably, the biggest being the significant financial commitment, millions more in expenses that would come with expanding the men's and women's fields. There's no timeline on a verdict. Again, why not? There are other notable updates regarding the NCAA tournament that were approved and will be announced Thursday, sources said. So first off, those other updates, obviously I'm recording this on Wednesday for Thursday. When we learn what those things are today on Thursday, Andy and I will talk about those other updates on Friday's show. So stay buckled up for that. That'll be fun. But interesting, this whole thing about the expenses. Here's why. The big thing we've been told all along is that the whole reason these commissioners and everybody are wanting to get in on this is because more money. It's all about the money grab. Money, 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 money. More teams for me, more teams in, more money in. But the thing here is we got to remember, you bring in more teams, there's a bunch of more money that's got to go out as well. And so clearly that's a hang up in this thing. So let me just say this. I feel zero sympathy to these power conference commissioners who want more teams, translation, who want their more teams in the NCAA tournament. You're the ones that put yourselves in this position. You made the bed of beefing up your conferences, and now you got to lie in that bed. And I'm not trying to help you out with watering down my NCAA tournament so that you can get more of your middling or sub 500 teams into that entity, the greatest single thing we have in all of collegiate athletics. So miss me with that over and over and over again. This is an issue of your own making. Don't make the rest of us suffer because of it. My bottom line, leave this thing alone. I always say, if you're going to do anything, go back to 64. If you feel like you got to tinker downwards, down to 64. Don't tinker upwards anymore. And look, I know that's never going to happen. It's just some silly world where I think we might actually ought to have a tournament bracket that actually just fits 64 teams. Wow, how crazy would that have been to go back to? Which is why we got to 68. Let's remember that. we're just appeasing people that were throwing out a 96 team field. So it's like, what if we gave you a couple more, right? So anyway, I know it will never happen to go back to 64, but that seems to make more sense than going bigger. I digress. Now, a couple other reminders on this from Matt Norlander's reporting earlier in the week. The NCAA is considering 3 options on what to do. Of course, again, none of which are going back to 64 teams. But option number 1, just let a sleeping dog lie, meaning stay at 68 teams. Option 2, increase to 72. Option 3, increase to 76. Why? Come on, man. Just leave it. Leave it alone. So, and here's part of it you got to know too. The NCAA is not going to move when this event is played. It's not going to move to May. It's not going to start earlier or later. Here's why. You may or may not be aware that basically the schedule of our sport of college basketball is determined by the Masters. It's kind of like the church calendar. Everything's determined by when Easter falls in a given year. So the Final Four for both men and women is always played the weekend before the Masters. So like the men's Final Four is always Saturday. The men's championship game is always Monday. And that's going into Masters week. On the front end of this, the other thing is part 2, the NCAA is not going to move when conference championship week is. That's going to stay as well. So, you get some like Big 12, ACC end on Saturday, Big 10, SEC end on Selection Sunday the next day. You're going to have Selection Sunday, and then you got this 3-week window that you got to get it in. And I know the women's is a little bit truncated. They play on a tighter schedule, but the men are not going to change from their Thursday, Sunday, Saturday, Monday thing, meaning you can't add days into this thing. You've got Tuesday and you got Wednesday for your playing games, nothing else. So any extra teams you add, they got to get in on those 2 days somehow, some way, somewhere. That's what we're talking about. So I just, there you go. There you have it. End of the day. And you should go back and read Matt Norlander's article about this, where he lays out 5 reasons that expansion is both undesirable and unnecessary. And I completely agree with him on it. And I'll just say a couple other, let me just burn through those really quick. Number 1, most sports fans are against expansion. Yeah. I mean, that is the thing. It's like, I get commissioners, you're just going to do what you're going to do. Who cares what the fans think? But you're making money because of our eyeballs. If our eyeballs don't care as much about your watered down event, then the televising partners aren't going to re-up or give you more money. And also, we shouldn't blame the NCAA as much on this. They're simply doing their due diligence. It's the commissioners and ADs and head coaches, some of them, who are pushing for this expansion. Like Greg Sankey, for me, has always been the face of the evil empire on this thing. And the NCAA committees are just doing their due diligence to look into it. Now, my frustration with them, again, comes because they haven't made a decision yet, whereas they should. Norlander's second point is that expansion won't bring much more money, if any. Here's the thing there. TBS, CBS, or Turner and CBS have already negotiated. There's a deal in place through the 2032 tournament. And there are 0 guarantees that they're going to go back and renegotiate because you add 4 or 8 more teams to this tournament. But if you add 4 or 8 more teams to this tournament, as we said a minute ago, that adds a bunch of expense to this thing that you're not getting much more money back for. And then ultimately, if you're one of these commissioners who's just trying to get more money, it's pointless, right? So the money's just not there. Simple math, more money out, same money in is a loss. Point 3 from Norlander, expanding amid uncertain times would be short-sighted. This one just makes logical sense. There's been so much upheaval across the collegiate sports landscape lately. NIL, transfer portal. We're just getting into this massive realignment literally right now. We haven't even seen the dust settle on it yet. Wouldn't it make a ton of sense to let the dust settle before you go changing the best single entity you have, NCAA, right? Like it feels like that should be obvious to me, but apparently it's not. So there's that. And then Norlander's last 2 points, minor expansion in the tournament will worsen scheduling for mid-majors. And then the fifth one, Pac-12's death guarantees more at-large bids for the big boys. And so if that's what they're trying to expand for, is to get more bids, you've already done that, because those bids that the Pac-12 was getting, they averaged 4.3 bids over the past decade. Those aren't going to mid-majors. You know how this works. It's the big boys that are going to get them. So you've already got those. Why do you need more? Keep it where it is. Do not change the NCAA tournament. If you're going to change anything, again, go back to 64. Other than that, leave it alone. This is the best thing we have. Stop trying to screw it up. Well, the Olympic basketball rosters are starting to roll in for the 12 countries involved. And guess what? There's actually another country in this event with more U.S. college basketball representation than America. What? Yeah, that's true. We'll get into all that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, man, I love sports, but it's really hard when we get to the doldrums of summer because the sports stop sportsing. But I wish they never would stop. I wish we just had more all year long, but we get fewer games. But here's the good news. FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you got to do is open their app, dream up bets anytime that you're in the mood, and voila, they got you covered. This summer, in fact, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. How about some World Series champion odds? I'll give you the top 5. Dodgers plus 320, Phillies plus 450, Yankees plus 550, Orioles plus 700, and the Braves plus 900. So if you want to get in on that action or anything else you can find there at FanDuel, head on over to FanDuel.com and start making most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks again for making Locked On College Basketball your first listen or watch of the day. So glad. Make sure you go check out all the other great offerings we have here on the Locked On Network. It's so good. There's so many great shows. Make sure you check it out. All right. I wanted to start talking some Olympics because one of the neat things that we see is every year every Olympics, there are all these countries represented, but there's a bunch of college basketball players, some that you may not even remember or ever even have heard of, representing their countries or an adopted country or something of that nature. So there are 12 countries that get to play on the men's side. You got 3 pools of 4 teams each. Obviously, America's in there, and you got a bunch of others as well. So what I want to do is look at the representation that we have from U.S. colleges on these rosters. And as I teased, the old stars and stripes, we don't even have the most. Thanks, LeBron, right? Because he came straight from high school. So Team USA has 12 players on it. You have 12-man rosters, and 11 of them are from went to a U.S. college. There are only one school has multiple players represented. The rest, it's all one-off. So I love that. I love that diversity that there is. And we had a little flip-flop on Wednesday that you probably heard about. So Kentucky is that one school that has multiple players, and they actually have 3 players represented: Bam Adebayo, Devin Booker, and Anthony Davis. There are actually 6 Kentucky players confirmed in the Olympics right now, with a couple more floating out there, like South Sudan, for example, hasn't confirmed their roster yet, but like Wenyan Gabriel is one of the possibilities for them, as an example. But the others, Davidson, some guy named Steph Curry, Duke has Jason Tatum, Georgia has Anthony Edwards, Iowa State, Tyrese Halliburton, Kansas has Joel Embiid, Texas KD, UCLA is Jrue Holiday, and then obviously you got LeBron screwing things up because he didn't go to college. And there was a San Diego State representation with Kawhi Leonard. He pulled out on Wednesday and was replaced by the Celtics' Derek White, who went to Colorado. So you got all these schools represented here: Kentucky, Colorado, Davidson, Duke, Georgia, Iowa State, Kansas, Texas, and UCLA. You love to see it. That's really cool. But America only has 11 of their 12 roster spots that played in an American college. So right now, there are 6 of the 12 rosters have been finalized. And so I want to share with you, in kind of descending order from greatest to least, of the other 5, in addition to America, the college representation of those. So why don't you take a pause and guess what is the country that has, since America has 11, that means there's somebody that has a full 12. That's right. One country, all 12 of their players played for a U.S. college, and that is Canada, who, interestingly enough, just named their roster on Wednesday ahead of playing America on Wednesday night. We'll get back to that in just a second. But here's Canada's finalized roster. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, who played at Virginia Tech, RJ Barrett from Duke, Kem Birch, who played at both Pitt and UNLV, Dylan Brooks from Oregon, Lou Dort from Arizona State, Melvin Ejim from Iowa State, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA from Kentucky, Trey Lyles from Kentucky, and Jamal Murray from Kentucky. So Canada has 3 Wildcats as well. Andrew Nembhard, who played obviously at both Florida and Gonzaga, Kelly Olynyk, who also played at Gonzaga, and you got Dwight Powell from Stanford. So that's Canada's 12. I really wanted Zach Edey to play, but he had pulled out a couple weeks ago, right around the draft. Andrew Wiggins pulled out. He would have been a great addition for Canada as well. So there's that. So Canada has 12. All 12 of their players played at an American college. USA has 11. And then there's 2 countries tied with 7 each. You want to guess those? I'll give you a second. And then I'm going to say it. 3, 2, 1. It's Australia, and probably one you didn't get, Japan. How about that? Australia has 7 players plus one that played D2. Obviously, I'm not counting that in this count. So those 7 players for Australia are Matthew Dellavedova, who played at St. Mary's, Josh Green, who played at Arizona, Jock Landale, also from St. Mary's, Will Magnay, who played at Tulsa, Jack McVeigh from Nebraska, Patty Mills, the 3rd St. Mary's player on this roster, and Duop Reith, who played at LSU. Japan's 7 players, Akira Jacobs, who played at Hawai'i, Kai Taze, is that how you say it? Like Jonathan Taze from the NHL, played at UNC Wilmington. Rui Hachimura, obviously, who played at Gonzaga. So Gonzaga's got a bunch of players in the Olympics as well here. Yuta Watanabe, that played at George Washington. Josh Hawkinson, who is an American, but has gained citizenship actually in playing in Japan, played at Wazoo at Washington State. Kasei Tominaga, who has just been at Nebraska. Man, what a player he's been the past couple years. And then Hugh Hogland, also Watanabe, who played at Portland and UC Davis. And then the only other 2 rosters that are finalized right now, Spain has 2 players that played in an American college, Santi Aldama, who played at Loyola, Maryland, and then Lorenzo Brown that played at NC State. This one's also interesting to me. France has finalized their roster. 0 of the French players on this roster played at an American college. How about that? I kind of found that interesting. Now, there are 6 rosters that are not finalized. Let me give you a sampling of those. Germany, their full roster is not announced yet. They just haven't narrowed it down. But like, for example, both Wagner brothers, who both played at Michigan, will be on that roster. South Sudan, I mentioned them earlier. They've cut their roster down to a low total of 50. So we're waiting to see that. But there are a bunch of college players on this list. They could actually have quite a few when it's all narrowed down. Bol, who played at Oregon, Deng Adel from Louisville. I mentioned Wenyan Gabriel from Kentucky, Peter Jock from Iowa, Maker that played at Howard a couple years ago, Kaman Maluach, who's actually about to be a freshman at Duke right now, Mengak Mathian that played at Louisville also, and JT Thor from Auburn. So South Sudan has a whole bunch of collegiate options. I'm really curious. They could be up there, one of the top collegiate represented schools. Puerto Rico, for example, on their qualifying roster, they had Jose Alvarado that played at Georgia Tech, Tremont Waters that played great guard at LSU. We'll see there. Serbia, they haven't announced theirs yet. It's down to 16, but for example, they've got Uros Plavšić that played at Tennessee a couple years ago. So really interesting there. And then Greece hasn't announced their roster. Who else have I not talked about? Brazil hasn't announced their roster. So the group, let me just give you America's group if you haven't looked at it. It's Serbia, South Sudan, and Puerto Rico. So that'll be interesting. By the way, if you're not keeping tabs, USA is going to play like some tune-up games. It's got a 5-game USA basketball showcase. They played Canada actually on Wednesday night. Slow start. We're down pretty big, but came back and won 86-72. a lot has been made over the starters. On Wednesday night, at least, it was LeBron, Steph, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, and Joel Embiid. There's a lot of push, I think, for Anthony Davis to be in that starting lineup. So we'll see what happens there from Coach Kerr. It'll be interesting. All right. So there you go. That's the Olympics. It's going to be fun to keep tabs on that and see how it goes. Just loving to see how our college guys are represented doing it at the Olympic level. Now, I've got a couple of updates for you on a Thanksgiving multi-team event and a Christmas week multi-team event. We'll get to those. I'm feeling festive. Let's get into it in just a second. We've gotten updates on two different MTEs this week, and I want to update you on those. One, we actually got the bracket, which I always love because we can start thinking about the matchups. The others, we just got the competitors, the teams that are playing in this field, and so we'll get to that. But I want to take them chronologically. So first, let's go with the one that will happen leading into Thanksgiving week, and that is the Paradise Jam, which takes place in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I've never been to the USVI. Anybody been there? Man, I'd love to. Love getting to that part of the Caribbean. They're just out in the Pacific, in the Atlantic Ocean. So they are on, like, I think it's called Atlantic time, like Eastern time +1. So there you go. So this event is going to take place November 22nd through 25th. That's the Friday through Monday leading into Thanksgiving week. So like the championship game is Monday, like 3 days before Thanksgiving. And so that'll be fun because that's Monday also starts like Maui Invitational, for example. So you just keep rolling these one in to the other. Here's the bracket. Love that we've got it already. You've got Longwood. Game 1, Longwood, the Lancers versus UAB. That'll be the first game to tip. And then game 2, and it kind of goes in bracket order. So these winners will play, these losers will play. Game 2 is Illinois State versus McNeese. Which I'm excited for that, right? Like we just talked about McNeese on yesterday's show because they're playing Alabama in non-con. I am excited for that game. That should be good. And then the bottom half of the bracket, game 3 is Louisiana versus Liberty. We've got a bunch of L's here. And then game 4, George Washington, who we just talked about, funny enough, against Kansas State. Kansas State, the only high major team in this field. We'll be seeing if Coach Jerome Tang's team can be getting back to what they were 2 seasons ago. They brought in some great transfer portal guys, so we'll see how that all comes together. But interesting that K-State is the only high major team in this event. As you look at it on paper, I would expect that K-State comes out of the bottom half of the bracket. I would expect on paper, again, McNeese is the best team in this thing. UAB has been pretty good recently, but I would expect the championship game to be Kansas State versus McNeese. Again, another good opportunity for McNeese. It's just hard for these high-level mid-majors to get games against high major teams, and so would love that for McNeese as they try to build up a good resume there. And I'm going to assume that K-State wins this thing. That should be how it happens. That championship game, by the way, again, is Monday, November 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 9 p.m. local there in the Virgin Islands. All right, the second MTE that we want to talk about today, this one happens during Christmas week. Remember, we don't typically, most of our MTEs are happening in and around Thanksgiving. So it's fun to just get something happening here around Christmas because Christmas is kind of owned by the NBA, but why can't college basketball get a little slice of that pie as well? This is the Diamond Head Classic, which happens in Honolulu, Hawaii, not to be confused with the Maui Invitational that happens during Thanksgiving week. This event will take place December 22nd, 23rd, and 25th, so taking Christmas Eve off. That's Sunday, Monday, Wednesday. If you're making your holiday plans, Christmas falls on a Wednesday this year. By the way, speaking of, how are you guys out on holidays? You wish they were fixed or you wish they were floating? I hate that we have some of everything. Like, for example, I wish Halloween was just always the last Friday in October. I think that would be so much more helpful. Anyway, I could get all off on that. Diamond Head Classic, Honolulu, December 22nd, 23rd, and 25th. This will take place at Stan Sheriff Center, which is where Hawaii plays their home games. No bracket yet, but we did get the teams revealed to us earlier in the week. So those teams, let me give them to you alphabetically, are Charlotte, Charleston, Hawaii themselves will play in it. And there's something I've read up on this before, and I should have reminded myself. if these actually count as home games for Hawaii or not, since they're playing at their home arena. Loyola Chicago, Murray State, Nebraska, Oakland, and Oregon State. So there you go. Pretty interesting field. You got a little bit more high. Do you keep, is Oregon State still count as a high major now that they're in the West Coast Conference? Because if not, Nebraska is your only high major school in this bad boy. So Charleston, reminder, Chris Mack is the coach of Charleston now. Basically, he and Pat Kelsey have sort of changed places. Remember, Pat Kelsey went to replace Kenny Payne at Louisville, who replaced Chris Mack at Louisville. And Chris Mack is now taking the spot vacated at Charleston by Pat Kelsey. So that's kind of fun. Loyola Chicago, Drew Valentine. They had been not great 2 years ago. They kind of came back a little bit last year. Loyola Chicago did. So hopefully they'll have a good year here. Murray State, the fighting Ja Morant. Hopefully they'll have a good show. Nebraska, we just talked about Kasei Tominaga. He's off and gone now, so we'll see what they're going to look like under Fred Hoiberg this year. Oakland, the fighting Jack Golkis. We'll see how they do. They lose Golke. They lose Trey Townsend, who's off to Arizona. And so a lot of their talent's gone. Obviously, a lot of Oregon State's talent left because of them not being a high major school anymore. So an interesting mix of schools here. And tickets, by the way, for the Diamond Head Classic expected to go on sale in October. All right, y'all, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Fun to talk about. As a reminder, Andy and I will catch whatever those extra NCAA tournament things that are going to be revealed today on Thursday. We will talk about them on tomorrow's show, so make sure you're with us for that. If you haven't subscribed to us on audio and video, we'd love to have you do that. This is your show every day. Thanks again for making it your first listen or watch. As a way to get to become more of an everydayer, we'd love to have you join the Locked On College Basketball Discord. It's free to join. The link for that is in the show notes. As always, apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.